The following are the words of Louis Civello, President of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers risk their lives to protect our communities and keep our streets safe. These officers are the thin blue line that stands between your family and the criminals that would do them harm. We are your neighbors, protecting your neighborhood. Hold the line. Support law enforcement. Stand with the Suffolk County PBA.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we're moving right along. Now, we do have Louis Civello, president of the Suffolk County PBA. And I told you, he's very busy right now, so at least we got him to call in just a little bit. And we could get his take on this and, you know, this whole a general theme that we can take when discussing this. And I think we all need to put this out from Maine to California. Louis Civello, how are you, my friend?
Doing very well, Tom. Thank you for having me on. Sorry I'm a little late to the party here.
Yeah, no issue with that at all. I was telling the folks that a lot of the organizations, the Fraternal Order of Police and the PBAs throughout this country are very concerned of what's happening to the brothers and sisters in blue and in gray and all the different law enforcement uniforms there are in Southern California. But I think one of the problems that bothers me the most, Lou, and we're very, very lucky here in Suffolk County, is that the electeds there, the people that hold the power, the public policy decisions, the governmental leaders, just don't have their backs. How do you contend with that, Lou?
Yeah, it's very true, Tom, and that's why you have to be very careful about who you give those levers of power to. So if you look at what's happening in L.A., it's very similar to what happened just a few years ago with the BLM riots and the BLM grift. And it's very well organized, and what we know now from looking back in history is just how well organized it was. If you go back and look, and many journalists risk their lives to get this information for being on the ground in these riots and with these domestic terrorists, they're using tactics, Tom, like having paid lawyers on call. They have a slush fund that they use to bail rioters out of jail. They have expensive radios that they use to radio each other and let them know the locations of law enforcement. They have training sessions where they train people on how to riot, how to mask their identity, how to use makeshift weapons. So this is being funded at a very high level. It's being organized. Again, very similar to what we saw during the BLM riots. And the powers that be are basically with a wink and a nod in L.A., the mayor, Karen Bass, the governor over in California, Gavin Newsom, they are facilitating this, right? So this is being facilitated by the very people that you elect to protect the public. So it's an absolute disgrace. It's disgusting. It is putting the lives of the public in danger. It's putting the lives of our brave men and women in law enforcement in danger, and they should not only be ashamed, they should be removed from office. It's the dereliction of duty at the highest level over in California, and the fact that they're trying to blame this on the federal government. You have the ICE agents, Tom, doing their job. Yeah. Their job is to enforce our immigration laws, and we have violent offenders here that come to our country, they flout our laws, join gangs, commit heinous crimes, up to including murder, up to including rape, sometimes the rape of children. If you go on ICE's social media and you see the type of people that they are capturing and removing, these are predators, Tom, predators. It should be controversial in the least that they are taking these people and removing them from our country. And instead, what you have is you have law enforcement being attacked, you have riots happening, damage to property, destruction, and it's being facilitated by the mayor of L.A. and the governor of California. It's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, and I was watching the looting. You got to add that to the list. Besides the burning of the police cars and the breaking up of cinder blocks, I saw an individual breaking cinder blocks up on the sidewalk, and there was a line of people handing out pieces of the cinder blocks to proceed to go further to throw them at the radio cars, the patrol cars. And this is what's taking place. And yet the elected officials don't see that whatsoever. It's not happening in their minds. They're blaming it on law enforcement. They're blaming, of course, the president made it worse by sending in assistance to the cops that needed it. Your experience as a law enforcement officer is vast. I know you have New York City experience. You have experience out here. You remember when you were in New York City, the call for a 10-1 or a call for a 10-13 in Suffolk County. And we were talking about that the other day on the program. And that was the call that went out initially. I think it was Friday. in Los Angeles, and the LAPD were not allowed to respond right away because Karen Bass instructed her chief or whoever was running the department at that time that they're not needed. In my mind, 10-1, 10-13, however you want to put it, depending on the jurisdiction, that alone should tell people that you are abandoning law enforcement. And that is something that I think you and I both have a responsibility to put out to the people that this actually took place, Lou.
Yeah, same situation up in Rochester, where those rights officers called for assistance, and essentially the Rochester PD did the right thing and responded, but the mayor and the police chief up there were looking to discipline officers afterwards for going and helping their brothers and sisters in this critical time. That is the most stringent rule when you raise your hand to uphold the Constitution, is that when another officer calls for help, you go, because we're the only ones coming, and it's life or death, and we're talking about a matter of seconds or less where an officer is going to be killed and lose their life. So that help comes. Every officer knows that rule. When you hear that 10-1, when you hear that 10-13, when you hear that call for help, you drop whatever it is you're doing and you get there. And it is an absolute travesty that we have these elected officials who are cowards and have never done, anything of the caliber that these police officers do in risking their lives, or you're telling these officers, no, you abandon ICE, you abandon those federal officers. We don't care what happens to them. You don't respond. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, and I hope this message gets out. I hope people can sit down and say, I think I'm going to have an injection of common sense, okay? Because it just seems that the legacy media is playing upon and handing the microphone to the Hakeem Jeffries, to the Representative Jayapal, and Maxine Waters. I heard her. She's a nutcase, by the way. She was actually taunting the National Guard as to their presence there, and that they're going to go out and shoot kids or whatever the heck she was saying. This is extremely dangerous rhetoric that's taking place on the left. Let's just hear. I do have a clip I want you to listen to. Clip number 2.
All of the violence and the escalation is core to the Trump administration's authoritarian playbook. As we see people exercising their constitutional rights to peacefully use their voices to speak out against this injustice, they are being met with tear gas and rubber bullets from this unconstitutional, unlawful administration. Even the LA Police Department said that the protests were peaceful before Trump rolled in with military tanks on the streets of Los Angeles. Federal law enforcement from DHS, ICE, HSI, and the FBI, all to crack down on peaceful protesters who were standing up for immigrant workers, who were standing up for the economy of this country, who were standing up for our communities, for our families, and saying, don't tear us apart. We are going to stand united against this authoritarian power grab.
Lou, that was Representative Jayapal. Did you hear anything that was truthful there? And again,
no.
I mean,
that's a gross distortion of the actual events that are happening on the ground in LA. I mean, she is a liar and a fraud, plain and simple. I mean, we all have eyes. We all can see. We can watch the video of cinder blocks being thrown through police car windows, of cars being lit on fire. It looks like something out of a Mad Max movie, Tom, where they're riding around on motorcycles, wearing masks, torching things. Does she really think that we believe this, that this was a peaceful protest or a mostly peaceful protest, to quote their absurd language? It's an absolute lie. It's an absolute distortion of the truth. Again, the idea that even if he had deployed the National Guard and the fact that there is an armored vehicle present somehow then gives you the right to assault police officers, to loot and to burn down stores and to set, cabs on fire, it's ridiculous, right? So even if the National Guard is deployed, that does not give you the right to riot, plain and simple. And the one thing that I will give Democrats credit for are the tactics that they used. So if you take a look at the January 6th riots, that's what it was. This wasn't an insurrection. This was a riot. And anybody that riots, anybody that assaults a police officer, well, it was on January 6th, or it's happening today in L.A., they should be held accountable, right? So one of the things that the Democrats did correctly was to use federal law enforcement to track organizers down, track people down, and then hold them accountable. That's what needs to be done here. So when you have these domestic terrorists, it doesn't matter if it takes 6 months or 6 years. You need to identify them, you need to arrest them, and you need to put them in federal prison for long periods of time. Because if you don't do that, Tom, we're going to relive this over and over and over again. Because relying on the state system, where there are no repercussions, where they just let you out, where they have a team of lawyers ready to work for these people, where sometimes there is no bail that's even allowed to be set and people just walk free, there are no repercussions, right? So we need to utilize the federal system. The FBI needs to get cracking post this whole event, find out who the organizers are, find out who's funding it, identify the people that are participating in this domestic terrorism, and put them in federal prison and do it for long stretches of time. Because I guarantee you right now, people who rioted on January 6th, right, they wouldn't do it again. They wouldn't do it again, plain and simple, right? Because there were repercussions. And whether you got pardoned or you didn't get pardoned, you're not in a rush to go walk back into the Capitol or break a window or assault a police officer. In the same way, hold these people accountable, put them in federal prison for long stretches of time.
I believe Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, is looking into federal charges if the state doesn't do that. Because if we're going to rely on Karen Bass, the mayor, or Gavin Newsom, the governor, to take your words and say, listen, this is what we have to do. I had seen something this morning. A number of LAPD officers were trying to stop looting. And you know what that's like. If you have 100 looters and 4 cops, how difficult it is. Yet they chased 1 or 2 down who were carrying the stuff. These individuals, the perpetrators, ended up dropping the stuff. The officers tackled them and then put them in cuffs and took them away. And I was very happy to see that. Well, if you can catch 2 or 3% of the looters, maybe the message will be out there. But I was just wondering in my mind, and maybe you can help us with this. What's in the minds of the cops with the riot gear, and they're trying to do their job. They're trying to stop a business from being looted. There's fires all around them. There's people throwing things at them. And then they also know that they have a mayor and a governor that are absolutely useless. I don't know how you could perform that way. Your thoughts, Lou?
It's so demoralizing, Tom, and that's why you see in many of these big cities, you see police running as quickly as they can from these jobs. So, one of the things in policing is that you have that pension, you're vested, you're invested, and you're basically weighing it out of, should I do a few more years and get to my pension, or should I just run now? So, a lot of these officers leave at their earliest opportunity to get out. Every one of these officers, are brave. They're willing to do their job. But when you don't have the backing of the elected officials, when you're worried about, am I going to be sued? Are they going to take my house? Where they try to remove qualified immunity across these countries and every one of these woke cities. When you're worried about, is the woke DA going to put me in handcuffs for just doing my job? It's a no-win situation for these police officers. That's what's in their mind. They're trying to protect life and property, but at the same time, they're in a no-win situation. So it shows you why these jobs, people are running from them and not taking these jobs.
Exactly. Last time I spoke to you, obviously an event that you attend all the time, and we have about a minute or so left. Just your thoughts on the police memorial this year. You were down there, and I spoke to you very briefly about it. Pretty amazing what went on.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. It was, an honor to be there with the families. So the families of our fallen police officers traveled to D.C. with us, and we stand there at the candlelight vigil. We remember their loved ones, and for us, we always think about the sacrifice of the officers themselves who lost their lives. But what really is important is that those families make that sacrifice every single day, every milestone in their lives, every time a holiday comes by, every wedding, every anniversary, every time they go to dinner, Tom, or sit down at their own dinner table and there's an empty seat at that dinner table. They relive that tragedy. They make that sacrifice over and over. So, our absolute heart goes out to our families, and we cannot do enough for them. And it was our honor to be there in D.C. with them.
Terrific. Yeah, I read about that all the time, and one of these years I want to make it down there because I heard it's such a great, solemn occasion. But at least it shows that this country is behind law enforcement. Once again, Louis Civello, Suffolk County President of the PBA. Always good to have him on with us. Lou, have a great day, and we'll talk again in a couple of weeks, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we get back, we've got Alan Bodie, the chief DA. They're trying to get this bill passed in Albany. We're going to be talking to Alan in just a minute. We'll be right back.